3 days after I got out of prison, the man who once called me his family looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're disgusting." Not a whisper, not a slip, a sentence. Final. Like a judge delivering the last word, only this time I wasn't in a courtroom. I was in the back seat of his car, the same one that used to take me to school, to birthdays, to the hospital the year I got pneumonia. Now it was the car he used to drive me home from hell, and somehow he made it feel worse. I didn't expect him to come. The day I walked out of the state facility in Otisville, I told myself I'd take the bus. I had it planned. Route cash, even the seat I wanted back right against the window. But when I stepped out in that wrinkled gray uniform, dragging a bag of borrowed clothes and unread court papers, he was there. Nathan Turner, black car, black coat, black sunglasses, like he was headed to a funeral, maybe mine. He didn't get out, just popped the trunk. I hesitated for 5 full seconds, thought about walking away, but the road was empty and my pride had blisters. So I got in. We didn't speak for the first 20 miles. The radio played static. He adjusted the mirror. I kept my eyes on the trees, too green, too full, like the world had kept blooming without me. Then he said it. "You're still breathing." Not a question, just an observation. I turned my head slightly. "Did you hope I wouldn't be?" He didn't answer. We pulled into the driveway of the Turner estate just past noon. The house hadn't changed. Same white porch, same shutters, same flower beds Mrs. Turner used to trim with surgical precision. The porch light was on. She must have been waiting. Nathan killed the engine but didn't move. He stared straight ahead and said quietly, "You don't talk about this. Ever." I looked at him. "You mean your lies or her lies?" He flinched, just slightly. But I saw it. Then he grabbed my duffel and walked ahead like he hadn't heard. Mrs. Turner opened the door before we rang the bell. She pulled me into a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "You didn't even call, sweetheart." We were so worried. I nodded into her shoulder. Because what was I supposed to say? "Sorry I missed Sunday dinner. Your son testified against me." Inside the house smelled like vanilla and roast beef. Familiar, safe. Aunt Patty brought out lemonade like it was just another summer day. Mr. Turner shook my hand twice, said I looked matured. No one mentioned prison, no one mentioned Amanda, and I played along. Because when someone gives you a warm plate and a seat at the table after 2 years of counting crumbs, you pretend. Even when the man across from you once swore under oath that you were violent, dangerous, jealous. Even when he looks at you like you're a stain on his floor, you smile, you say thank you, and you count the minutes until you're alone again. That night, I unpacked my bag in the guest room, not my old room. Nathan's took that when I left. Note, this was the smaller one, the 4 visitors one. Clean sheets, new lamp, no history. I stood in the doorway for a long time. Then I whispered to no one I survived, "You don't get to take this part, too." And I closed the door from the inside. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and cinnamon. For a second, I forgot where I was. The room was too quiet, the sheets too soft. Not the rustling metal bunks, not the scent of bleach and worn-out plastic trays. No shouting, no footsteps in the hall, no routine count. Just sunlight pouring through sheer curtains and a knock at the door, like something from a life I used to have. "Breakfast's ready, honey," Mrs. Turner's voice said through the wood, like nothing had ever happened, like I hadn't disappeared for 2 years. The dining room table was set for 4. Mr. Turner in his usual chair, newspaper folded beside his plate. Mrs. Turner humming as she refilled a coffee cup. Nathan already seated, phone in hand, scrolling like he wasn't sitting across from the woman he helped put behind bars. Morning, Mrs. Turner beamed. "You look rested." I murmured a thank you, sliding into the only open chair. She passed me a plate stacked with pancakes. "Made your favorite." I wanted to say that was my favorite when I was 16, back when I believed love could be unconditional, back when I thought sharing a last name meant something, but I said thanks. They smell amazing. Because that's what you do when your hands are still shaking under the table and no one notices. Nathan didn't say a word. He just scrolled until his mother tapped his wrist lightly. "Put that away, Nate. We're celebrating." My fork paused midair, celebrating what Mrs. Turner smiled. "You coming home, of course." Nathan set his phone down slowly, didn't look up. I excused myself after 2 bites, said I had to check on some emails. But the truth was, I needed to breathe. I stepped outside onto the back porch, the same porch he once kissed me on when no one was looking, the same porch I cried on the night he told me Amanda was coming back. I sat on the swing, watched the trees sway, and felt a scream crawl up my throat. But I swallowed it, because I still hadn't told them the truth. They didn't know their son stood in court and said I pushed Amanda into traffic. They didn't know he called me unstable, dangerous, that he said I had always been obsessed. They thought I left, voluntarily, to clear my head, to write a book, because that's what Nathan told them, and I let them believe it. Because if I shattered their version of reality, I'd have to live in the mess with them. Later that day, I found Nathan in the garage. He was working on his car like he used to, shirt sleeves, rolled up grease on his fingers. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You told them I was in Europe?" He didn't look up. "You want a medal for staying silent?" "No," I said. "I want to know why you lied." Nathan finally turned toward me, his face unreadable. "Because I didn't want them to lose both of us." I laughed, sharp, bitter. "You didn't lose me, Nathan. You gave me away." He stepped closer. "You think I wanted this. You think I raised a hand. Don't rewrite history. You didn't just watch me go down. You handed them the match and lit the fuse." His jaw tensed. I was scared. I stared at him. I was too. But I didn't destroy you to save myself. That night, I wrote the first sentence of the memoir I hadn't touched in 6 months. The worst betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from people who once traced your scars with trembling hands and swore they'd never leave. And I knew. This time, I would finish it. Not for him. Not for justice. But for me. Because if I was ever going to reclaim my story, it had to start with the truth. The library downtown still smelled like old paper and lemon polish. I hadn't been there in years, but the floorboards still creaked the same way. The same sunlit corner where I used to write college essays. The same librarian who once offered me peppermint candy during finals week. Except now she didn't recognize me, which was a relief, because I wasn't the same. I sat by the window with my laptop open and my manuscript on screen. What the Ocean Kept. Chapter 4. My fingers hovered above the keyboard for 10 minutes before they moved. The night he said he loved me, he smelled like someone else's perfume. It had been Amanda's birthday. I had planned a small dinner, cooked, cleaned, bought a cake with vanilla bean frosting because he liked the smell of it on my skin. He came home late, eyes bloodshot, jacket missing. I asked where he'd been. He said, "Don't start." And when I stayed silent, he said, "You're not her." Like it was a curse. Like I was a disappointment for not being a ghost he hadn't buried. I should have walked away that night. I didn't. Because back then, I believed if I just loved hard enough, he'd see me. But you can't compete with a memory someone refuses to let go of. Back in the library, I wrote until my eyes burned. Then I emailed Daniel a new chapter draft. He replied 5 minutes later, "This is fire. Keep going." I smiled, closed the laptop, and for a moment I felt weightless until I saw the woman standing by the door. Amanda, same perfect hair, same designer coat, same eyes that scanned the room like she owned it. She hadn't aged, just evolved. She saw me, smirked, walked over all casual elegance and venom, didn't know they let convicts check out books. I stood, slowly, met her gaze with something I hadn't had before: indifference. "You still use an AI to frame people, or have you upgraded to bribing judges now?" She laughed. "You always did have a mouth on you." "Yeah," I said. "Too bad I didn't use it sooner." Amanda leaned in, voice a whisper only I could hear. "You think anyone cares about your little sob story? You're still the girl who went to jail." I stepped closer, voice low, steady. "And you're still the girl who ran out of ways to matter without ruining someone else's life." She blinked, took a step back. I walked past her without looking back, because the thing about surviving monsters is one day you stop seeing them as nightmares. They're just noise, and silence is stronger. That night, I told Daniel everything: the footage, the deep fake, the silence. He didn't ask why I hadn't spoken sooner. He just said, "We'll get the truth out, one page at a time." And I believed him. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't alone in my fight. Before I went to sleep, I checked my email again. There was a new message from a literary agent. Subject line: "Interested in representation. Powerful voice." And suddenly, the girl who once begged for someone to listen, she realized she no longer needed permission to be loud. It wasn't the metal bars that broke me. It was the silence. No one tells you how quiet prison gets after lights out. No voices, no steps, no comfort in the dark. Just your own breath counting seconds, trying to remember who you were before the world stopped believing you. I kept to myself. That's what they recommend for first-timers. Don't look anyone in the eye too long. Don't ask questions. Don't offer answers. Be quiet. Be useful. Be invisible. So I folded laundry, peeled potatoes, mopped hallways until my knees stiffened. My name became New Girl, then Quiet Girl. Eventually, just her. Not Olivia. Never Olivia. My bunkmate Lila had been in and out 3 times. One night, she caught me crying with my face in a pillow and said, "You in for love, I wiped my nose." "What?" She shrugged. Most of us are, whether it's for someone we tried to keep or someone we couldn't let go of. I didn't answer, but I think she knew, because the next morning she left half her toast on my tray. That's how women apologize in places like that, small offerings of warmth in a place built to freeze you. There was a girl named Kelsey in the block next door. She'd been beaten so badly by her boyfriend she finally hit back. He pressed charges. She got 5 years. He got sympathy. The system didn't ask her what he did before the night she snapped, just what she did after. We weren't that different. Me and her. We both tried to survive men who got to walk away clean. 2 months before my release, a counselor handed me a pamphlet. Reintegration services for women. I flipped through it. Job placement, housing leads, therapy hotlines. and a small note at the bottom. Remember, you are more than your sentence. I wanted to believe that. But what they don't print is that the sentence doesn't end when the doors open. You carry it into every job interview, every awkward conversation, every hesitant handshake, every time someone Googles your name, every time you flinch when a stranger raises their voice, every time you walk into a room and someone looks at you too long or not at all. The day I got out, it rained. Not heavy, just soft and cold and endless. They gave me a $20 prepaid card, one plastic bag with my clothes, and a brochure titled Moving Forward. Nathan's car was parked at the curb. He didn't get out, didn't wave, just unlocked the door and waited. I almost didn't go, but the street was empty and my heart was tired, so I climbed in, and he didn't say a word. That night in the Turner guest room, I dreamed I was back in the cell. But this time, I wasn't alone. Nathan was on the other bunk, wearing a suit, holding a gavel, staring straight ahead like he still thought he was the hero. I woke up sweating, the pillow soaked. But for once I didn't scream, because I finally knew the difference between being trapped and being done with someone. I lit a candle, sat at my desk, opened the memoir file, typed "Some people survive prison, some people survive love." I survived both, and neither left me clean. The first time I met Daniel Reed, I thought he was there to arrest me again. He showed up at the cafe where I'd agreed to meet a potential collaborator for my book someone my editor recommended. I didn't expect him to be in uniform, didn't expect the badge, didn't expect the calm eyes that didn't flinch when I stood up too fast, or the way he pulled out a chair like I hadn't been caged for 2 years. He ordered black coffee. I ordered nothing. Still couldn't drink it without tasting institutional bitterness. He opened his notebook and said, "You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to." And just like that, the pressure shifted. Not a single question about guilt, no curiosity about the scandal, just quiet space. An hour passed, then 2. By the 3rd, I told him everything. Amanda, Nathan, the way the trial hinged on one doctored clip and a man who'd once kissed my collarbone in the dark. Daniel didn't interrupt, didn't pity me, just listened. When I finished, he leaned back, tapped his pen once, and said, "You want to tell your story right? Then let's get it clean. Get it sharp, and let's burn the lie down to the bones." The next few weeks, Daniel helped me organize every messy page. He read chapters out loud sometimes, slow and careful like he was holding my words with gloves. He never corrected my pain, never tried to shape it into something more palatable. When I doubted myself, he said, "You've already survived it. Writing it down won't break you." Sometimes we sat in silence for hours. Just 2 people in a quiet apartment with open notebooks and bruises they didn't speak about. One night, I left my notebook at his place. When I came back the next morning, it was sitting on the kitchen table. He'd tucked a note inside right at chapter 6. "You wrote, 'No one ever believed me.'" I did, from the first sentence. It broke something in me. Something I didn't know was still holding on, because for the first time since Nathan, since Amanda, since prison, I believed I could be seen without being destroyed. I wanted to tell him about the hospital visit, about the scan, about the word oncology, but I didn't. Not yet. Because Daniel looked at me like I had chapters left, like I hadn't been written to the end yet. And maybe I wasn't ready to tell him that I'd already started writing my last page. That night, I stood in front of the mirror and tried to recognize myself, not the inmate, not the foster daughter, Not the girl who loved someone who buried her with his silence. Just Olivia. And for the first time in a long time, she looked like someone worth saving. The email came on a Thursday. Subject line, Rechain of Custody Audit, Amanda Lee. I had almost deleted it thinking it was spam, but something made me click. Inside a forwarded report, video metadata, a string of messages between Amanda's legal team and a private digital consultant, someone who had been paid 5 figures to stabilize the original footage of the accident. Only it wasn't stabilization, it was manipulation, frame-by-frame alterations, face smoothing, light mismatches, and most damning of all, a time code showing that the original unedited clip had been filmed 2 minutes before the incident even occurred. I stared at the screen frozen. Everything I'd whispered to myself alone in that cell, all the truths I had folded into the corners of my bunk and buried under my ribs, they were right. She had faked it. Amanda had doctored a video to frame me. And Nathan had chosen her anyway. I sent the file to Daniel, no message, just the link. He called me 10 minutes later. "You want to go public?" I didn't answer right away. I was sitting on the kitchen floor, my back against the fridge, the cold seeping through my spine. Then I said, "Would it matter?" Daniel's voice was firm. It would matter to the next girl she tries to ruin, and to every woman who's ever been called crazy just because she didn't bleed loud enough for someone to believe her. That night, I drafted a press release. Daniel helped me frame the language. My editor said, "This will get ugly." I said it already was. But just as I was about to hit send, the pain came. Not the emotional kind. The kind that folds you in half at the waist, that turns your knees into water, that fills your mouth with metal and the back of your throat with fire. I collapsed in the bathroom, woke up in the ER, IV in my arm, monitor beeping. Daniel sitting beside me, his jacket draped over my legs. He didn't speak right away. When he finally did, his voice cracked. They said it's bad. Olivia. They said it's everywhere. Stomach, liver, lymph nodes, stage 4. No surgical options, just a long, slow unraveling. I laughed. 'Cause what else do you do when the universe finally hands you the truth and then takes the rest I told Daniel not to tell anyone? Not Nathan, not the Turners, not even my publisher. He nodded, didn't argue. Just held my hand like it was a promise. I went home with a bag of pills and a schedule of treatments I had no intention of following. I sat at my desk, opened the final chapter of What the Ocean Kept, and wrote. Justice isn't always the gavel. Sometimes it's surviving long enough to speak your side of the story before your breath runs out. Then I recorded a video. My voice was calm, my face bare. I said my name is Olivia Grant. I was falsely accused, falsely imprisoned, and finally truthfully dying. But before I go, I need you to hear what Amanda Lee did and what Nathan Turner let her do. I never published the video. I sent it to one person, Nathan. No explanation, no note, just the file. Because if he was going to lose sleep, I wanted him to know exactly what silence costs. The morning after I sent Nathan the video, he showed up at my door. He looked like he hadn't slept. Eyes red, shirt wrinkled. The kind of dishevelment that comes not from chaos, but from collapse. I didn't let him in. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. He didn't say hello, just stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve, and had just realized he'd lost the final piece. "You knew," he said. I didn't respond. "You knew it was fake, all this time." I tilted my head. No, I believed it. That's the difference between us. He paced, once then stopped, hands in fists. I believed her because I thought you were too perfect, too composed. You didn't fall apart the way guilty people do. I let the silence answer, because he wasn't wrong. I didn't fall apart. I shattered quietly, where no one had to watch. He looked up. Why didn't you send that to the press? Because I didn't do this for justice. Then for what? I stared at him. Dead on. No blink, no breath wasted. So you would have to live with the truth. He exhaled, reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a box. Small, velvet, classic. I laughed. A dry, ugly sound. No, I said. You haven't even looked. I don't need to. He opened it anyway. A ring. Simple. Gold. Oval cut. The kind I would have adored when I still thought he was someone worth waiting for. I wanted to do this years ago, he said. I stepped back. Then why didn't you? He swallowed. Because I thought I'd have forever. I could feel the wind shift between us, the weight of everything unsaid trying to push the air out of my lungs. You destroyed me, I whispered. I know. You ruined my life. He looked down. I did. And now you think you can give me a ring and it'll undo it all. He didn't answer. I reached out, closed the box, and handed it back. You don't get to marry a woman you buried. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling chest, tight with the weight of final things. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just existed. In the silence left behind by a love I outlived. A week later, I stood in front of a crowded bookstore in Brooklyn. The event was called Voices from the Silence. Women who had survived the justice system were reading excerpts from their work. I read the opening of What the Ocean Kept. When I finished, no one clapped at first, just breath, holding, waiting. Then someone stood up, then another. Then the room filled with something louder than applause. Recognition, because they didn't see a victim, they saw themselves. Afterward, Daniel walked me outside. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug that felt like a landing. I leaned into him and said quietly, I wish I had more time. He didn't ask why. He just held me tighter. The sun was out, bright and stupid, the kind of light that makes you feel like the world didn't get the memo about your grief. I sat at my desk, hands trembling over the keyboard. Not from fear, not even from pain, just from knowing this was it, the last chapter, the final draft, the end of the story where I got to choose the last word. I opened a blank document, typed the title Letter for the one who watched me burn. Then I wrote Nathan. I once told myself I wouldn't die with your name in my mouth, but I've learned that silence isn't always strength. I need you to hear this before it's too late, before my body gives out, before your guilt hardens into something permanent and poisonous. You didn't just send me to prison. You sent me into the wilderness. You made the world look at me like I was a threat, like I was crazy, like I was disposable. And I took it, all of it. For years, I carried the weight of your fear, your lies, your refusal to admit that the woman you worshipped was capable of cruelty. I screamed into my pillow because I knew if I screamed in court, no one would hear me. And even now, after the truth came out, after the video, after the pity in your voice, when you offered me a ring, I still haven't healed. I've just outlived the pain. That's what survival looks like, Nathan. It's not graceful, it's not pretty. It's just breathing through the parts that should have killed you. I don't forgive you, but I release you. Because forgiveness implies you deserve something from me. You don't. But I do deserve peace. And that peace begins when I stop asking for an apology you don't have the courage to give. You broke me, but I rebuilt myself. Not into the woman you once ignored, but into the woman you'll never forget. I printed the letter, folded it, sealed it in an envelope, wrote his name on the front in blue ink. Then I wrote another. This one was for Daniel. Daniel. You showed up in the quiet, not as a rescuer, not as a savior, just present. You let me speak without expecting redemption to follow. You let me hurt without asking for a timeline to heal. You never tried to fix me. You just made space for me to breathe. And that's more than anyone's ever done. I wish I had more time, not for anything grand, just for small things, like hearing you laugh again or watching you read one of my chapters out loud with that ridiculous editorial voice you put on. I don't want you to mourn me. I want you to keep living loudly, because the world needs more men who listen first and speak after. And if you ever feel like I'm still here, it's because I am. In every page, in every woman who writes because someone like you believed she could. Don't visit my grave. Visit the next woman who needs to feel heard. That's where I'll be. I left both letters on the kitchen counter, one marked N, one marked D. Then I took a walk. No phone, no watch, just air. I sat by the river until dusk, watched a mother push her daughter on a swing, watched a boy fall off his bike and laugh like gravity was a joke. And I smiled, because life went on, and so would my story, even if I wasn't there to finish it. Nathan found the envelope before noon. He had come by uninvited again, said he wanted to check in, said he felt something. He always said the right things a little too late. He saw his name in blue ink. He didn't open it right away, just stared at it standing in the doorway of the kitchen like if he waited long enough I'd walk in and tell him it was just a draft. But I didn't walk in, and the letter wasn't a draft. He sat on the couch, the same place he once told me I was a memory he regretted. He opened the envelope. He read every word, and when he reached the end, he didn't cry. He just sat very still, like he'd been struck, like the air had been pulled from his lungs and replaced with something heavier. Across town, Daniel found his envelope at sunset. He had let himself in with the spare key I gave him just in case. When he saw the letter, he froze. Then he whispered, "No," as if the word alone could rewind the day. He opened it, read the first line, sat down on the edge of my bed, and wept, not loudly, not with drama, just a slow, steady unraveling. The kind of grief that doesn't perform, the kind that roots deep and stays forever. They both called. They both left voicemails. Nathan's was short, just my name, repeated 3 times like a prayer or a curse. Daniel's was longer. He said, "I hope this isn't goodbye, but if it is, thank you for trusting me, for surviving long enough to tell the truth." That night, Aunt Patty lit a candle in the front window. She didn't say why, didn't need to. The whole house knew, even the walls knew, that this time I wasn't coming back. By morning, the news broke. Olivia Grant, 31, best-selling author of What the Ocean Kept, passed away last night in her Brooklyn apartment. The article said peacefully. They always say that. But I had died long before the last breath. I died the day my truth was called a tantrum. I died the night I stood alone in court while he looked away. I died in the cell where I buried my voice under 6 feet of silence. What happened that night wasn't death. It was release. Nathan sat on the floor of his apartment, the letter still in his hand. He whispered the same words he once spat at me. "You're disgusting." but this time he meant himself. Daniel stood by the river, held my letter in one hand, my book in the other. He read my dedication aloud for the women who screamed into pillows, wrote their truths in margins, and lived anyway. Then he let the river take the page, watched it float, then sink, like a secret finally freed. The funeral was small, just like I'd asked. No black dresses, no long speeches, no one reading verses they didn't believe, just Aunt Patty Daniel the Turners. And silence, the kind that honors, not erases. They buried me with a fountain pen, the one Daniel gave me when I finished the first draft. He said every survivor deserves to write her own ending. And I did. Mrs. Turner held my photo like she was trying to memorize it. Mr. Turner kept repeating, "She was good. She was always good." Nathan stood apart. He didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't move until it was over. Then he stayed by the headstone long after everyone left. The sky grew dark. The wind picked up, but he stayed. Because what do you do when the only person who ever truly saw you is gone weeks past? What the ocean kept climbed every list. There was no PR campaign, no viral moment, just readers, quiet, loyal, broken, who saw themselves in my words and whispered, "Me too." A scholarship was started in my name, the Olivia Grant Fellowship for formerly incarcerated women pursuing writing. Daniel handled it, said it was the least he could do. He gave interviews, signed books, taught workshops in prisons. He told them about the girl who once wrote by flashlight under scratchy wool blankets, the girl who never begged for pity, only truth, and Nathan. He disappeared. Some say he moved west, some say he left the country. But Daniel told me he still gets a letter every year. No return address. Just a note always handwritten. Always the same 4 words I never stopped reading. One night, in a college dorm in Ohio, a girl named Ray picked up what the ocean kept from a free book box. She read it in one sitting. The next morning, she changed her major, started writing again, started living again. Because I wasn't a cautionary tale. I wasn't the girl who went to prison. I wasn't the woman who died too soon. I was the voice they thought they'd lost, the proof that survival can still sing. And even now I am not gone. I am written, and written is forever.